Hello again, viewer. Eric the Car Guy here. How are you? Hey, you know, if it's your birthday, happy birthday. This is RE transmission fluid filter differential fluid change video. This is my video response to your comments and questions about the video that I did where I changed the transmission fluid and filter in this Subaru, and also I'm just going to group in those differentials as well. Just makes sense to like put them all together at once. A lot of you are tearing me up because my engine's dirty. You know what? I don't care that my engine's dirty on the outside. I care that it's clean on the inside. As far as the outside's concerned, if I'm looking for an oil leak or something, yeah, I'll clean the engine bay. But other than that, it's dirty, it's oily, it's going to be that way. About the only thing it's going to do is raise the temperature a little bit, but it's rust protection. That's just my opinion. I understand where you're coming from, and I hear you. I hear you. And here's the other one, the differential fluid change. I got yelled at for not breaking the fill plug loose first. I took the fill plug out first, which I thought was important to help it drain better, but I didn't break it loose first, and I got in trouble because apparently some people have been out there doing this and they go to take the plug out and it doesn't come out, and then they're screwed. So they got no way of filling the system. So they can empty it, but they can't fill it. Ooh, because they couldn't get the plug out. I like to be optimistic. I looked at it and said, I am going to kick your backside. Okay, I'm going to kick your ass. And that's what I went in and I did that. I just, you know, to me, I didn't envision those plugs ever not coming out. I have not had that issue. And I can say that the right tools do make a difference. And that 1/2-inch snap-on ratchet that I got, love that thing. That is a good stinking ratchet. I spent like $110 on the darn thing. It better be good. So those were like some of the highlights about this whole situation. Some of you remarked on the gasket stuff and bending the pan and all that kind of thing. And I hear you. I hear you. And there are times that you do have just like some kind of goop for a gasket instead of using a gasket. That's cool. I'm just trying to give you my methods that have worked for me and have not caused other issues. Like, you take out all the bolts and you have to basically chisel the pan off. I've never done anything like that. I've undone things like that and been kind of not happy about it. But enough about me. Also, oil capacities. I actually had all the oil capacities, and I'm surprised I didn't mention it. All those things were in the owner's manual. So I could actually look up how much the capacity was beforehand. I also looked up the capacity of the transmission beforehand. Some of you mentioned that when you drain the transmission fluid, you can measure the amount of fluid that came out and you have a pretty good idea what's going back in. Great idea. I don't feel like taking that kind of time now. You know, I just felt like doing it the way I did it. I keep dumping fluid in until it looks like it's good, and it's good. Some of you also mentioned some of the backwards compatibility of transmission fluids. Also a valid point. Probably the best way to deal with that is just to put in it what came out, and really only put in something else if you have no other choice. And some vehicles require specialized fluids for the differentials, or specialized fluids, like say for instance limited slip differentials. Take a special additive or a special fluid. So if you have those, make sure you know. On like domestic vehicles, I know a lot of times there'll be like a little metal tag that's bolted to the differential itself, and sometimes it'll say right on there whether it's limited slip or not. Probably the easiest way to tell is like jack both wheels up off the ground and spin one wheel and look at the other wheel. If you spin one wheel like clockwise and the other wheel goes counterclockwise, it's just a regular old differential. If you spin your wheel clockwise and the other wheel also goes clockwise, that's limited slip differential. It's probably the easiest way I can put that out there to you. So if you're not working on a Subaru, you're working on something else, looking to change the diff fluid, you don't know whether you got limited slip or not, that's a real good way to tell. Also, those limited slip differentials, to spin those wheels, a lot more effort. I hope this goes without saying, make sure your parking brake's not on when you do that. A little tip for you. Well, in conclusion, okay, Lucas. A lot of you didn't like Lucas. Well, on my Odyssey, I did another video a while back where I put second gear clutch packs in my Odyssey, and also at the same time I put Lucas transmission fluid in there. It didn't work. It didn't work in the case of my Odyssey. And I can say that as far as the Subaru goes, it's been probably about 600 miles since I did that fluid change. And initially it worked great. Like when I first drove out of here, I mean, it was an immediate difference. I mean, it shifted better, it did everything better, like immediately. So I knew that as far as my hesitation issue, I could narrow it down to something inside the transmission or the driveline or something along those lines, because that's what made the biggest difference out of any of the other stuff I did. All the engine performance stuff I did, nothing made as much of a difference in how this thing was running than a fresh fluid and filter and a little bit of Lucas. And then I had sort of a drop off. Then it kind of like went back to its old ways. And I'm like, what are you doing to me? I'm making videos with you, everything. Come on, what's your problem? Now, the strange thing is slowly it's getting better. So instead of it being so harsh, instead of there being such a wicked rubber band effect as I'm trying to move forward, it's actually getting better. And what I believe is happening with this is something that a couple of you have brought up. It's called torque bind. And what that is with an all-wheel drive vehicle is that it's having trouble sending power to the wheels. And it's sending too much power here, not enough power there, and it's kind of binding up. This doesn't have a transfer case, but for lack of a better word, where the transfer case used to be. In fact, I looked at the drawings of the exploded views of this Subaru, and there's actually a clutch that sends power to these front wheels. And I'm gonna show you something real quick on here. Let's take a look. Okay, if you wanna make your Subaru into a front wheel drive car instead of an all wheel drive car, you'll see right here on the strut tower this FWD cover right here. And there's no fuse in it now, but you can go into the fuse holder, pull out a spare fuse, 15 amp, and stick it in this slot right here. And your Subaru is now a two-wheel drive, front wheel drive. Actually, it'll be biased to the front wheels now. So it'll turn off power to the back wheels and it'll just be a front wheel drive car. And what you'll notice on the dash is there'll be a red FWD when you start it up. And you can use this for diagnostic purposes because this will eliminate the back wheels and pretty much clue you in on whether or not you have this torque bind situation. I think it's interesting to point out that I did this on this vehicle and drove it around and did not notice really any difference. And I think the reason for that is because, like I said on those drawings, there was like this clutch drum that looked like it was sending power to the front wheels. And I think that is what was starting to slip on me. Now, whether or not the Lucas helped that, it might be helping that. But I think ultimately what I'm gonna have to do is get inside that transmission and start doing some stuff in order to get it to behave like it's supposed to. However, slowly over time, it seems to be getting a little better. Now, some of you would also ask me, you said, Eric, well, what's the deal if you change the fluid if it hasn't been changed in a while and you're having an issue, and then you change the fluid and your transmission is bad? The best explanation that I can give you about that is, as the transmission wears, it's actually designed to slip, much like a manual transmission when you're driving a clutch and you're working the clutch yourself and you're slipping the clutch a little bit as you're taking off in first gear. That just leaves a little bit less material each time that you do that. An automatic transmission is very similar in that respect. However, all of those clutches are immersed in fluid. So all that clutch material, all that stuff that gets worn out and rubbed off gets embedded in the fluid and it becomes a part of the fluid. That's what makes it dark. The darkness actually comes from the worn out clutch packs, the stuff that the clutch material is made out of, that's working its way through the system. Automatic transmissions are super heavy dependent on hydraulics. So the fluid that's in them is the lifeblood. For lack of a better word, it really is the lifeblood of the automatic transmission. Without it, transmission doesn't work. So if that blood is thicker, it will fill up spaces that if you put thinner fluid in, the thinner fluid won't fill up that space. In fact, the thinner fluid will go right through. The thick fluid will work, and it will make all the stuff work like it's supposed to. The thin fluid runs right through there. And in an automatic transmission, if you're leaking internally past seals and things like that, you lose pressure. You lose pressure, you lose the transmission. I hope that's like enough of an explanation for you, because that's basically what happens, is that you start out with really thick fluid that hasn't been changed in a really, really long time. You get that thick, dirty fluid out of there with all that particular matter in there. And that has also gone around and very nicely machined everything on the inside of the transmission to make it a wider gaps and all that kind of stuff. Get that old fluid out of there, get the new fluid in, and that stuff's like rock and rolling. It's slippery, it's wet, it's ready to go. And then the transmission starts to slip because there's pressure loss. That's the best explanation I can give you on that one. And then getting back to the additives, what those additives do is they sort of go in there and do the same sort of thing. And a lot of problems in transmissions, automatic transmissions, can actually happen in the valve body. We'll get into this. I'm actually about to tear into my Odyssey transmission here pretty soon. And I also plan to do a video similar to what I did with my engine breakdown, but with an automatic transmission. In fact, sitting over there in the corner is a transmission that's going to be our victim. But I don't want to use the Honda transmission, because Honda transmissions are like different than just about anything that's out there. I think Audi's the only other one that I can think of that actually makes a transmission like Honda does, which is basically a standard transmission turned into an automatic transmission. Long, convoluted explanation, but I'd like to show you a more traditional automatic transmission setup, because showing you Honda stuff I think is kind of useless, since that's a small percentage of what's out there. All that aside, as far as those additives go in and help those valves inside the valve body maybe move a little better, maybe help those clutches grab a little better if they're starting to slip. And that's what happens. In an automatic transmission, you're losing pressure or you're losing the ability to hold things. So there's things that, like clutches and bands inside the transmission, that need a certain amount of grab to them. But if you've got pressure loss, they can't grab as much and they slip. That's where you get the term from. Or like it goes to shift a gear and like the RPMs of the engine, like, whoa, way up. And that's because that's slipping. It's like riding that clutch. It's exactly the same thing. It's like having that clutch halfway in and halfway out. Not all the power from the engine's going through the transmission to those wheels, and it slips. I hope that gives you a better explanation. But as far as additives, Lucas, whatever, I used Lucas on this because it was available. If your transmission's worn out, it's not gonna work. I mean, you're wasting your time. I'll tell you that right now. 9 times out of 10, if you have a transmission problem, it is not going to be solved with some additive you dump in. Remember the part about those parts on the inside of the transmission wearing out? Well, there's nothing that can go in there and like rebuild all that stuff for you and make it all better. It's just not until we like perfect some kind of nanotechnology where they can go in and rebuild all the clutches and everything for you, just dump them in there. That would be awesome. Maybe one day we'll get there. We're not there yet. So in other words, if your transmission's starting to exhibit signs of like real transmission problems, it's not likely that dumping any kind of additive in there is going to do a darn thing other than lighten your wallet. But you never know until you take the chance. And in my case, well, this service needed to be done anyway. I hope that answered a lot of those questions that you had brought up to me during those videos. I appreciate your comments, and I do read those comments. I'm just not responding to them directly, other than in these videos. So I make these RE videos to basically respond to your questions and concerns from those previous videos. If you have automotive questions, I would ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. Use the search function, type in a couple of keywords. Check engine light codes. You got those? Type those in. They'll come up. And you might find answers like immediately right then. If not, sign up for the free forum. We're all over there wanting to help you. Other than that, Google+, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find me there. And I will leave you with, be safe, have fun, and stay dirty, my friend. Indeed. Till next time. Try to enjoy the daylight.